And hello, everyone. Happy Friday, wherever it is that you find yourself. Welcome to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I'm your host, Coach Elix, and with me, I have the wonderful one and only
Steven the Medium is in the house.
Steven the Medium is in the house. Steven, how are you?
I am really excited because I just posted my second TikTok video.
Oh, yes. Let's talk a little bit about that because I happened to walk into Steven's office and I looked at his desk and there's two Sesame Street puppets just sitting there. So I know he was up to something. I just didn't know what exactly he was up to. So what exactly did you do with your puppets?
Well, you know, Elix, when you come up here, because my office is the top floor, you enter at your own risk, right? You should be, at 28 years, you should know things are always happening up here. So both, just last week I did my first TikTok video, which I was really excited about. I was excited because I did it myself, and I did the second one, and both videos have... Well, let me just say they're both puppet themed. Maybe I was a puppet when in a previous life. I don't know. But I used my puppets because these are from when I was a little boy in the 70s. Jim Henson's puppets, all the Sesame Street puppets, came out. And I loved puppets, and I would take a hissy fit with my mother if I saw a new puppet. We'd always go to Ann and Hope, which used to be in Rhode Island, and they always had the puppets, and I'd run to the toy aisle, and if my mother said, not now, I would just do whatever I could to get another puppet. So I have 8 of them, and they're the originals from the 70s, and I am very proud of them because I kept them, and hey, listen, I think they deserve a little TikTok action, so... It's all in fun. It really is just like TikTok is. It's fun.
And what that, I do know that you are a kid at heart. So, of course, none of that surprises me because that's already, after 28 years, that's what I expect. That said, it's almost like expect the unexpected. I never know what you're going to come up with. I know it's going to make me laugh. That's for sure.
And it did.
It sure did. So
but, check me out. Check me out on TikTok or Instagram under Steven the Medium.
Everyone, if you're not connected with Steven the Medium, you better connect with him today because there's a lot that you can learn from Steven. Steven, the other thing that sticks in my mind is today we're talking about blind spots, by the way, those things that you don't know. And I'm going to get into that in a couple of minutes. But you and I do CrossFit every day. And after CrossFit, I go running with Steven. We go to the Cape Cod Canal. And you have a friend, right, that you've met. You want to tell people about your friend?
Well, it's a little bit personal. It's a little intimate. But I've all summer long, I've had a summer romance, summer flirtation with Sammy the seal.
Yes. So we see seals on the canal, and we've seen Sammy before, a few times before. And this time, Steven runs ahead of me because I'm a slow runner, and I heard him. And I heard the noise, and he was like very intentional in trying to get my attention. And of course, I'm so nervous trying to find my phone, trying to get it quickly so I could do a video, a phone, picture, something. Of course, I missed it. So then, as soon as I see Steven, I'm like so excited to tell him, "Hey, I just saw Sammy. And of course, Sammy makes another appearance. And this time, was it me or was he like really intentional?
No, he
wanting
was
to like be with us.
Yeah, no, he was. He was just staring at us, and and I said, I cannot believe you saw Sammy, and I didn't see Sammy. And I know he's going to come back, so we'll both get to see him. So I got my phone out and got the video ready, and sure enough, like seconds after, Sammy, he did a little show for us, and his little face, his head comes up and he's just he's like playing with us. He's, as I said, he's flirting. He's staring at us. Then he would sort of like go under, then come back up. And
Yeah.
I posted that video this morning on Instagram also.
Yeah, so there's a second reason to go check out Steven's Instagram page.
Yeah,
now,
seals and puppets.
So the one thing though that I do want to bring up though is I was so excited because there's a seal on the Cape Cod Canal, and there was this older guy walking by, and I was like, "Did you see the seal?" And he's like, "Yeah, I saw it, and they're such a nuisance," he said. And that comment like took me off guard, and I was like, of course I didn't say anything. Steven had a few words to say to him because Steven is super protective of Mother Nature and animals, but it just made me, that comment just kept, it's stuck in my head, and I'm thinking to myself, what human would say that a seal is a nuisance? And then it made me think, but wait a minute, they're a nuisance to whom? This is their space. The ocean is their space. So if they're a nuisance to what? To boaters, to fishermen, to whom? Who are we to say that? Like, we're invading their space. This is not, the ocean is not ours, it's theirs. So I just thought, Stephen, that it just struck me, and it just irritated the heck out of me, listening and hearing that, because it's almost like, so it felt anyway after the fact, it felt so disrespectful to Mother Nature and to these beautiful creatures.
Well, you know something, Alex, both of us, it landed like that for both of us, but I've said this on my show through the static, and anyone who knows me has heard this come out of my mouth, that I grew up with a family that loved or loves animals, my whole extended family. And my mom and my aunts used to say that their father, Frederick, who my middle name is Frederick, and I'm named after both grandfathers. This is my mom's dad, and he used to say to his girls, he was a very proud Irishman, and a very stubborn and very strong Irishman, and used to say, if you don't like animals, you're not a good person. And that is a motto I have, and there's no exceptions for me. There's just no exceptions.
Yeah.
And I've said it. People know that I say it, and it's just the way I am.
And we love you exactly for all of that. So let's talk about today's show, Stephen. I'm really excited about today's show because
Me too.
This is a conversation that I have with every single client, whether it's an individual client, whether I'm working with teams, whether I'm working with CEOs. Every single client gets engaged in a conversation about blind spots. So, let me start with this. I would argue that most of our lives happens in the realm of knowledge. So what does that mean? It means that there's things that we know, right? You know how to drive the car. I know how to cook. Stephen went to law school, and he knows how to be an attorney. I'm a coach. I know how to be a coach, and we could go on and on and on and on and on, right? About the things that we know. There's also those things that are unknown to us, but they're also known. We know that they're unknown to us. So I know I don't know how to speak Chinese. I know that I cannot be a doctor of any type, and again, I know Stephen cannot cook, right? Stephen?
What?
So, and you know that, right?
Yes.
So those are the things that we don't know, but we know that we don't know them. So again, I would argue that our life happens in the realm of knowledge. By the way, there's a book that I refer to every single one of my clients, The 3 Laws of Performance, and they talk about this in the book as well. Now, Why this conversation is important is because this is a conversation that triggers us to look at that other side, a pretty big side of that pie that's left untouched. So if there's a whole lot of things that happen inside our circle of awareness, things that are known to us, and then there's a whole lot of things that happen inside that circle of unawareness, but we know that they're unknown to us. What do you think it's left on that other side of the pie? That third, side of the pie, Stephen.
What's left?
Yeah,
Well, I would assume the whole part that's not touched.
correct. And that's the point of the conversation. Today, it's a conversation about that self discovery of what it's left that most of us don't even talk about because they exist in the realm of the unknown that is unknown, blind spots, things that are so hidden from our view that we don't know that we don't know them. And if I said, give me an example of that, I guarantee any listener out there, you cannot come up with an example of that. Because if you would know them, they would exist in the realm of what you know, knowledge. And if you didn't know them, they still would exist in the realm of what you know, because you know what you don't know as well. So these are blind spot things that are so hidden from our view, but the fact that they're hidden from our view doesn't mean that they don't impact everything that we do. They get in the way of who we are, they get in the way of our actions, they get in the way of how we experience life. And the power of this conversation is that when you discover and you practice the art of discovering those blind spots, and there's a way of practicing and discovering the blind spots, it actually creates that opening for what we experience as aha moments when you go and you say, oh, aha, wow, now I get something that I didn't get before. But I would also argue that that aha moment alone, the discovery of the information alone, is not enough. You still need to get in action, because the aha moment without action is just new information. Action is what will create, what will lead to breakthrough results. So I hope that this is resonating with you, whomever's listening out there. And we are about to take a break, so why don't we take a break, and when we come back, we'll dive deeper into the conversation of blind spots. And we'll be right back. And hello and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elex. I am your host, Coach Elex, and with me is my co-host,
Stephen the Medium.
Stephen the Medium's in the house. And today we are talking about blind spots, the things that you don't know that you don't know. So if you ask yourself, what would that be? The answer to that would likely be, well, you don't know, because if you knew, you would know. You would know that you know it, and if you didn't know, you would also know that you didn't know it. So these are blind spot things that just exist in that realm of the unknown. Now, experts, tell us that our unconscious mind makes about 90% of our decisions without even us knowing. That's just what happens. And blind spots lead to unconscious biases. And by the way, an unconscious bias conversation can be a show in and of itself, and that can narrow those unconscious biases can narrow our vision, and potentially, and I would even say, and most definitely, it will influence our behaviors. And we all have blind spots, by the way. They are those certain dimensions, they're part of who we are. And they exist in every single human in the planet has blind spots. It's almost like, when you drive that car and you look to the right and you see nothing, you look in the rearview mirror and you see nothing, and then you look sharply to the right and there's a car right there. You didn't see the car, but the fact that you didn't see the car doesn't mean that the car wasn't there. The car is there. And if you were to make an abrupt right turn, you probably would hit the car. So the same works for things in our life, the things that get in the way. Just because we don't know what they are doesn't mean that they're not in the way. Doesn't mean that they won't get in the way. Doesn't mean that they're not holding us back, or that they're not preventing us from pursuing the things that we want. And sometimes when you're feeling stuck, when you're feeling disempowered, or in a place where you don't have, you feel bad about certain situation, often those feelings come because blind spots are the things that are leading the conversation for you. What do you think so far, Stephen?
Well, I think that every single person who's listening to this live show or listens to your podcast, that it applies to every single person.
It does. It really does. And think about, our brain and how our brain operates, Stephen. Our brain is overloaded every single day with, about 11 million pieces of information every second. Yet we can only process about 40 of them. That's how our brain operates. So we are wired to make cognitive, shortcuts to help us make sense of those information. And often what happens is we use past experience to make assumptions, and that leads me to two subjects that we discussed here in the show before. One of them is those significant moments that lead to life sentences. I talked about the 3 laws of performance. That's a book that's written by people that mentor me in my career, at the beginning of my career, and they talk about the impact of significant moments and how those significant moments lead to life sentences. So let me stop there for a moment. Those life sentences for many of us live inside blind spots. They live inside the unknown. They are not moments unless you make an intentional effort of recalling what those significant moments may be for you. And that's part of the process. That's how you train yourself to discover blind spots, to really ask yourself, what are some of those significant moments that have happened in my life, and go back as early as possible. And you'll remember, by the way, you'll know what those moments are. Stephen, you talked about knowing, right, that one significant moment for you was when your father committed suicide, and you were 6 or 8, Stephen?
8 years old.
8 years old. And that moment, that experience led to a life sentence where you created stories about who you were. But the problem is that those life sentences, you are unaware that that's what's happening. So they live inside, the unknown, blind spots. And the problem with that is that without you knowing, pun intended, they get in the way. They get in the way of everything that you do. They get in the way of how you respond to situations. They get in the way of how you react to somebody saying something to you, sometimes, good or bad. And that's where this conversation is so very powerful. What are you thinking, Stephen?
Well, I think from that traumatic experience when I was 8 years old, if it wasn't for therapy and honestly, if it wasn't for the realization of me being a medium and connecting and hearing dead people talk and having that also connection, I'm not really sure. I think I probably, I can't just, I can't guess for sure, but I think there's a very high probability that I would be in the same place I was probably 15 years ago, because those blind spots are, like, they're called blind spots for a reason, and it is so easy to move through your life and not have an inkling of this blind spot or blind spots. It's you're just on your path, and it almost feels like when you realize it, you feel like the blind spots, all you needed to do was look down on your path and you see the spot. But when you're not there, it's just you're oblivious to it. It doesn't come on your radar, and you just continuously, as you said, Elix, create stories, and they just keep going and going and going and going. And thank God for myself that I did, find therapy and spirit to and I'm still a work in progress to get out of that, that place where I didn't see the blind spots.
Correct. And I remember distinctly, when one point several months ago, you and I were having a conversation, and you actually said to me, wow, I just had this aha moment, where you talked about, you've known all along that, the fact that your father committed suicide was very impactful to you, but it wasn't until you sort of like sat with the conversation and, and the impact that had on you and how you view life, that you then realize, wait a minute, I've been looking at life from, before, this kid before the event and after the event, and how you were responding to life, how you've gone through life, right? Since being 8 years old. From that,
I was going to say, I wrote a blog about that, just the pre-8 and post-8 with its two little boys that I had no idea were battling, the pre-8-year-old who's just this loving, great, happy, satisfied young boy, and then there's the after 8 or the post-8 who is who's battered, and not physically, who is crushed, who doesn't understand why they just have one parent versus the pre-8 had two parents. And those two boys, my entire life, were fighting with each other. And in the blog I said my goal is to get to a place of having these two boys merge into one. I don't think I'm there yet, and it just goes to show you just the effects of the intensity of these blind spots. But I am so in such a most incredible place now of understanding where I am. And one of the things, Elix, too, that I wanted to bring up is that I don't know if this makes any sense, but when you say you don't know what you don't know, I think for me there's also that I know what I don't know, but I really don't know. Because there's times that I've felt, and I think it's all part of the blind spots, that I feel like, no, I know what I don't know, and I would make up stories based on that because I really didn't know. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense, and that's actually what happens when we, these life sentences are stories. There are stories about that got created from those significant moments, and those are stories that lead to a whole lot of assumptions about who we are. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not in many cases. And again, that is based on those blind spots, the things that you don't know. The problem for many of us is that until you discover that these are blind spots running your life, many people, Stephen, live their life not from the perspective of I, you know, there's I'm not good enough is a story. They actually believe that who they are is not good enough. And that's very problematic. Chris Argyris, by the way, Harvard business professor, created this model. It's called the ladder of inference. And what he argues is that we reach conclusions based on assumptions, and that's very problematic. The ladder of inference, lead to bad decisions. And guess what? Every single one of us is almost always climbing the ladder of inference. That's what we do as human beings. The power of this conversation is that when you don't know that you don't know, you have no choice in the matter. You don't have power over what you don't know, you don't know. But when you begin to self discover what those blind spots are, then you get to choose. Then you get the power of choosing what you're going to do about it. So I hope this conversation is, it's insightful and valuable for you guys. I think we need to take a break. So let's take a break and we'll be right back. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. Happy Friday, wherever you find yourself to be. I'm coming to you live from my home in Cape Cod, and I'm here with my co-host,
Stephen F. Masick.
Stephen the Medium, Stephen F. Masick. So, and Stephen and I are having a very thought-provoking conversation about blind spots and the power of uncovering, discovering what those blind spots are for you. And what we've been talking about, Stephen, is that blind spots happen at a very unconscious level for all of us. That's why they're blind spots. That's why they live in that space of what we don't know, the unknown. And our unconscious mind can put us in autopilot, and that's very problematic. So determining where we sit, on a train, where we eat lunch, who do we turn for advice? Do we choose to offer a helping hand? How we respond to these situations or not is often, a function of that autopilot response driven by those blind spots. How often, what types of situations do you find yourself allowing your brain to work in autopilot? And the answer to that question, by the way, it's sort of like it's one of those questions that there's no answer, because the answer to that question, it likely lives in that space of the unknown. Because if you knew that there's situations where you find yourself allowing your brain to work on autopilot, you wouldn't be doing that. So again, this is an exercise in practicing self-awareness, in mindfulness, and asking ourselves, questions like what are some of those significant experiences that I have had in my life that may have led me to statements like, I'm not good enough, I am not smart enough, I am not pretty enough, I'm not whatever blank enough. Living our lives in blind spots can put us and will put us in tunnels. You're going to be stuck with that same point of view, same decisions, same outcomes, same misconceptions, same snap judgments. And for many of us, when you find yourself in that down spiral tunnel, you find yourself stuck. You find yourself with a sense of unfulfillment, with a sense of dissatisfaction, lacking love, lacking joy, lacking whatever it is, lacking that sense of wanting more, and not knowing where to get access to that more. And Stephen, have you ever found yourself writing off or rationalizing a snap judgment as an honest mistake?
Oh, absolutely. I was also just thinking too, when you were talking about like just being in this tunnel. It's amazing that we can manipulate our like what our perception of our lives are, and just think. I mean, for me, even going through law school, I finished high school, went to the first year of college, hated school, and just stopped going. Then about 4 years later, I went back and worked 3 part-time jobs to get a bachelor's. Then went to law school. All of that just sort of was a manipulation. Like, I can't be, in a tunnel, or I can't have tunnel vision, or I can't have these blind spots, because look what I'm doing. Like, look at what I'm accomplishing. And I just think it's all part of just how intelligent our brains are, but how powerful these stories are, that we hang on to them, and with, and part of that is jumping to. Would you ask me, Elix, about like jumping to a judgment?
Yeah, like how often, because we listen to those stories not as stories but as our truth, and we begin to rationalize, that we are that. So then we sort of write off, right? How our own judgment about certain situations, or how we responded, or how we snapped at someone, or how we avoided, that situation. We write it off because it's our own way of validating, that story that we don't see as a story. We relate to it as something that's truthful. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, you know what, Elix? Let me just tell you something quickly which is such a breakthrough for me, because 3 years ago when I started my show through the Static, I remember it was just 3 years ago, because it was in September when this happened. I started the show in July. I landed James Van Praagh on my show as for an interview, and I couldn't believe it. I'm brand new. I've never done radio, and now I've got this high-profile medium coming in. Not coming in, but I was calling to do an interview. So one of the guys in the station came in with me into the studio, recorded it, and ultimately it was fine. Ultimately, the recording was perfect, and it's on my website, and it's all over the place. However, for a brief period of time, one of the guys in the station that wasn't usually in the studio with me, because Mark was producing, thought maybe something happened and he didn't record the show. And I remember Jim, as the station manager who's producing the show today, I sent he may not even remember, but a very nasty email, because it was all based on me. It was all based on, oh my God, people are going to think I'm not good enough. I didn't get this done right. How could this happen? I've already promoted it. I'm going to have him on an interview. And, if it was 10, 15 years ago, I would have done exactly what you said. I would have written it off. And I have to tell you, I think this was all reconciled. Jim was way better than I could have possibly imagined, and said he doesn't hold on to things. It's not a problem, Stephen. Let's move on. But I'll tell you something. That's never left me. It's something, and I'm glad it's never left me, because it's really, it's sort of like bashing one of my blind spots, that it affected me. It affected me how I acted. It affected me how I responded. And all I'm saying is, why I'm bringing this up is that when you get to that breakthrough, even though it makes me feel so crappy still that I wish I could erase it, it's still so much better than what you just said, Elix, creating a story and just saying, well, this is what was needed to happen, or listen, it's their fault. It wasn't me. They did it.
Yeah. But what you're demonstrating, Stephen, is that you went through the exercise of recognizing, what was a blind spot, and having that aha moment. But you didn't stop there, because that's what I keep saying to people. Having an aha moment where you go, oh wow, aha, now I get that I'm responding to that because, I'm using you as an example, Stephen. When my father died, I made these assumptions about who I was as a kid, and not being good enough, or worthy of love, or whatever, right? If you stop there, then all you're left with is just information. Now you have new information. But that alone doesn't create a shift, doesn't create a breakthrough in your life, whether it's career, whether it's relationship, or wherever it is that you want better. You need to take action. So now you need to take it to the next level. Now you need to, and what you're demonstrated in this conversation is now not only knowing that where that came from, but knowing that the next time you get triggered in the same way, you won't be responding in that way. You now know how to avoid responding in that way. That is not only discovering the blind spot, but that's also now taking action, right, to counteract those unconscious biases that we all have. Does that make sense, Stephen?
No, it makes perfect sense.
And for me, by the way, I talk very openly about being a latchkey child. I had no supervision. I grew up in an empty home. And what that forced me, and again, this was a blind spot for many years. My life was built around protecting myself from being hurt by others because I had nobody to protect me. Nobody. You know, young kids have parents. I had an empty home. And again, that's not a judgment about my parents. They did the best they could under the circumstances. They whatever they knew is what they could do best. But what I'm saying is that as a child, I made up some story about who I was and what I needed to do, and that story led me to make to certain behaviors, and I lived my entire life, protecting, not allowing people, not blocking people from getting very close because I didn't trust anyone. And it took the work that I'm doing today to discover those blind spots so that now I can think about, oh, I'm doing that thing again. And I could do the same thing that I've always done, but now I get to choose. Now it's no longer a blind spot. When it's a blind spot, you don't have a choice because it controls you. But when you know what it is, then you get to choose. You get to respond differently. So when we talk about, so what can we do, right? How can we enhance our objectivity? One of the things that I talked about with my clients is I bring back Chris Argyris and the ladder of inference. He suggests that we need to practice as human beings. We are almost always climbing up the ladder. He suggests that we need to learn to climb down the ladder. So how do we do that? You're going to find out after we take a break, when we come back. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elex. I'm your coach. I'm your host and your coach, Coach Elex, here with my wonderful co-host.
Stephen, the medium, and you are a host and a coach.
I know. I'm just used to just like I'm your coach, but I am your host and I am your coach. Let me start with during the break we were just having a conversation, and our general manager. He's graciously producing my show today because our producer Mark has another engagement, and he was sharing with me about he's learned that there's nothing you can do about the past, right? And he's absolutely right. You got to learn to let it go, and holding on to the past often comes from those unconscious biases, right? And that leads, and it's a lot of those blind spots that have us hold on to, those past experiences that you cannot do anything about. However, what you do have power over is, and that's what I just shared with Jim, is you always have power over how it is that you relate to it. You can't control it. It's done. It's over. But you always have power to how you relate to it. You could relate to it as being a victim of, or you could relate to it as something else. And I would invite you, all of you who are listening, to always make up something that actually empowers you. And again, that's part of this conversation, how to counteract those unconscious biases. So I talked about Chris Argyris, the ladder of inference, learning to climb down the ladder. One way that you learn to climb down the ladder is you question your assumptions. And you can question your assumptions yourself. You can ask other people to help you question your assumptions. But that is a wonderful way to climb down the ladder of inference, which is something that you want to practice if you want to get better at avoiding reaching conclusions based on assumptions. And Stephen, you and I do that very frequently. We have conversations where you ask me or I ask you, and we help each other. We help question each other's assumptions, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
The other thing that it's sort of important to bring up is our need, and this by the way, it's going to be a show in and of itself. Sometimes wanting to be right can take us in the wrong direction, and and that desire to be right often comes from those blind spots, by the way, those things that are hidden from your view that are just driving everything that you do or don't do. In the 3 laws of performance, the authors talk about that need to be right, and they call it complaints. And often what I would invite people to always consider is that when you have that desire to always want to be right about whatever it is that you want to be right about, that is almost always going to cost you, and it's going to cost you significantly. Because when we hold on to that position of wanting to be right, it costs us love, it costs us fulfillment, satisfaction, sometimes health and well-being, because we're stressed over the idea that we are absolutely right and everyone else is wrong. But you got to ask yourself, why am I holding on to that? Why am I keep holding on to that idea? And it's because it gets to validate that point of view, it gets to validate that position. Why I'm bringing this up is because that also comes from blind spots. That also comes from that place of those things, those stories, those experiences that are so hidden from your view, that are just because you don't see them, just because you don't experience them, doesn't mean that they're not there, guiding you oftentimes in situations that are not very productive for any of us. What are you thinking here, Stephen, so far?
Well, it makes sense, and what's so great about this conversation is just the sort of the knowledge of what blind spots are, and it just how expansive they are. Like they just expand. Like in places that I never thought.
Absolutely. And again, if a blind spot that remains a blind spot has power over you without question. There's nothing you can do because it's a blind spot. You don't know that you don't know that that's getting in the way. So a couple of things that I would say. The first step is to be open with yourself. Practice self-awareness and mindfulness. And one also part of that self-awareness is notice those moments where you let that one shining moment or speed bump sway your opinion about yourself, about a situation. That again, it comes from a blind spot. So just start paying attention and start noticing, oh, I'm doing that thing again, and I'm not going to do that this time, because that is what creates that opening for you to begin to understand where where they may come from. And oftentimes they come as aha moments where you don't even know. You just get that, oh my, aha, now I get why I'm doing that thing again. Also make sure that you look at all the evidence objectively. Focus on what's factual, not on the story that you're making up about what you think happened, because oftentimes we continue to play that story, and the more you play it, the more factual that it becomes. Then eventually you don't relate to that story as a story, you relate to it as fact. I am blank, not good enough. How many of you have that conversation in the background and you truly believe that you're not good enough? Or you spent years believing that you're not good enough, that you're not smart enough, that you don't have what it takes. I am here to invite you to consider that that's a made-up conversation that has been fueled by blind spots that is designed to anchor you. The next thing is ask for feedback. Ask for someone else to help you question those assumptions. Again, that's Chris Argyris suggests that that's how we climb down the ladder of inference. So ask for feedback. If you know you're in that place and you're maybe stuck, ask somebody to guide you. Ask somebody to help you again question those assumptions that you may be making about yourself. And then perhaps, this is sort of common sense, is learn to slow down your thinking. Learn to pay attention. I call it the imaginary pause button. I hit that button almost all the time, and when I hit it, I slow down everything, and that's when I ask questions and bring in other perspectives to expand my own point of view. So learn to hit that imaginary, pause button for yourself, and always remember the benefits of uncovering blind spots. They're gonna lead you to those aha moments. But remember, the aha moments without action, they're just the discovery of new information. You still need to take action. You still need to learn, practice to do things differently. That will lead to breakthrough results, whether in your personal life or your professional life. So, Stephen, having said that, I think I've talked a lot. What value do you feel, we've given our listeners today from this conversation?
I think the opening of a door, even if it's just a little bit, to having people start that thought process, like being curious about blind spots and being curious about, how affected are they. So I think this was an amazing show.
Thank you, Stephen. And I love having this conversation with all of you every week. I have to again say thank you to my right hand, Lindsay Darlin. She manages everything that I do. And honestly, she makes me look so good. But she works really, really hard at making sure that The shows are absolutely fabulous. And with that said, I want to make sure that I remind you that my show is available as a podcast, so you can catch up or listen to your favorite live show. Again, search for Coach Elex on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any podcast application. And you can connect with me at Coach Elex, whether on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. And Stephen, how do people connect with you?
Well, they connect with me by just typing in Stephen the Medium. So I pop up on all social media as Stephen the Medium. And definitely make sure you take a look, because there are definitely a lot of exciting things that are coming up in this fall.
Well, and one of the things that we want to remind our listeners is Stephen's schedule is fully booked for the rest of the year. So what are you going to do for people to get access to you, Stephen?
Maybe someone can throw me a parade and I can just wave to people.
I think people want more than that.
I can throw beads. No, I'm going to hopefully just be adding some virtual events to because I just don't have any more time to fit in private readings. So I'm going to have virtual events available, and I'm actually working on a incredible Halloween event, so that's going to be really exciting.
So stay tuned. If you're not following Stephen, you got to follow Stephen at Stephen the Medium.
Yes.
And thank you, our general manager, Mr. Jim Jones, for being here with us and producing our show today. I really, really appreciate your time and your attention, and
you sounded a little southern.
Generously.
Thanks, Jim Jones. I like that. He looks like Texas.
Yeah, well, living with you, you never know what to get. One of those things is I've learned to practice my southern drawl. Listen, everyone, have a wonderful rest of the weekend, wherever you are, wherever you find yourself, and always remember, get a grip on life, success, and everything that you want in life is possible. Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone.
Bye-bye.